How to have fun, anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to chumbacasino.com.
chumbacasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit chumbacasino.com. VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
The content you are listening to is part of the Nerd Initiative. For more info about check out the content you are listening to is part of the Nerd Initiative podcast. For more info about home and pop culture positivity, be sure to check out nerdinitiative.com.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Hopsgeeknews, your home for comic books, movies, TV shows. Sometimes we feature a beer of the week. Lauren and I don't have one this week, however, but we do have a really great guest because this is a creator-focused episode where we love getting to talk to comic book creators, anybody in the space about the things that they're doing. And this is a really good comic book, especially for our fans who are fans of horror. Dark Horse, which Lauren is a big fan of Dark Horse. I am myself. This is going to be his first title for Dark Horse, Loving Ohio. Matthew Erman is on the show to join us. So before we get to him, man, go ahead, subscribe, like, share, you know, all the stuff that us old people don't like to say, but it's the thing that you have to do out there. Put yourself out there. So please, by all means, help the podcast grow. And then, of course, Hopsgeeknews, any podcasting, any social media platform. So Lauren, you don't have anything. You're drinking
water in a cup that looks like beer, but
That's
it's
true.
water.
I am drinking water. So let's get to our guest of honor here. And Matt, welcome to the show. Great name choice. First of all, tell your parents.
Thank you.
Solid name choice as another Matt.
Yeah. I was, it wasn't their first choice. I was going to be originally named John Wayne, but they nixed that. I'm not even kidding. That was going to be my name. My mom was like, fuck no, that is unacceptable. You cannot name my son that. So luckily I got stuck with Matt. So I'm very stoked to have this name and be here and hanging out with you guys. So thank you. Yeah.
Of course, man. And, you know, you've worked for a ton of publications, Scout, Boom, IDW, Vault, Mad Cave. People know your works from Power Rangers to Dark Crystal, Long Lost, Good Luck. So we always like to ask our guests when they first come on, how did you get into this creating comics? What got you into comic books initially?
Yeah. So, you know, candidly, I didn't really read comics as a kid. I think, you know, there was a store where I grew up in Kettering called Mavericks. And I think I went in there once when I was like maybe 8 or 9 and picked up a Spider-Ham comic and a few other like, you know, Spider-Man comics. But that was basically my experience with comics growing up. And then when I got out of my hometown, when I moved out and came to, I live in Columbus, Ohio now. That's really where I got into reading comics. And Columbus is a great comic town. We have some incredible comic book stores, and we also have a art school here that has a comic book major. And so I really just kind of fell into it. And my wife, Lisa Sturl, is a comic artist, and she went to CCAD and studied illustration. And through her and through kind of just being in the city, I really started to fall in love with the medium. And I probably around 19 or 20 is when I started to really, you know, dive into some of the more well-regarded comic books, you know, your Alan Moore's, your Charles Burns, your, you know, Junji Ito's. I try to have a pretty wide breadth of things that I like. Lately, I've been mostly into old manga from the 80s.
Ooh, yeah.
So, you know, writing comics was never on my list of things that I thought I was ever going to do. I've been writing poetry and short stories and stories since I was a kid, you know, 12, 13 years old. And that's really where I started to get into being a writer is I tried to do the literary journal scene, and I was doing poetry publications, and for a long time, actually. And honestly, I never really found an audience that connected with my work in those spaces. And it wasn't until I made my first comic with my wife, Lisa Sturl. That was called Long Lost, and we did that with Scout. That I really started to see a path to making the stories that I've always wanted to tell, and we found an audience that liked the work that we were creating. And from that first comic in 2017, I went on to do Power Rangers and Dark Crystal and Care Bears, and I created mostly I've been creating my own original series for publishers, which is a huge honor. I'm very lucky that I get to do that. I don't have to, I've done the intellectual property thing, and it
work for the man.
I mean, that's where the money is, but it can be it can be a lot sometimes. And so, like I said, I'm really lucky that I get to tell the stories that I want to tell, and publishers are interested in them. And it's, like I said, super lucky. And that's my background in all this.
Well, that's a range though. Care Bears to Dark Crystal. Like, I love that.
I actually wanted to touch on some of this because you mentioned, I wanted to touch on Long Lost. So I'm glad you brought it up, because this was the first comic book, and then you talked about doing it with your wife. Now it's a comic horror series. It was actually optioned for television at one point. So like, what was that experience like, getting to work together? Did she like, hey, let's get this together? How did you guys co-create this comic
together? Me and my wife were very creative, and really we just love horror. I've always been a huge fan of horror. All swaths of it, from the French New Extreme to the giallo to B splatter to like the age where VHS was just pumping out every possible type of horror movie you could possibly imagine in the late 80s. I really love it all. And one of the things that kind of pushed both of us into making our own comic was that we weren't really at the time seeing a lot of stories and ideas that we were connecting with. And so we really wanted to put our money where our mouth was, and make our own thing, and see if we could kind of do what we wanted in that space. And that's where Long Lost came from. It was born out of feeling like we could do something better than other people, I guess. It was a little bit of a competitive nature from both of us.
Right. Well, sometimes they say write what you know, and other times it's write what you want to read, or what
exactly.
What you want to see.
That's that's really what we did. We just created what we thought should be out there already, and we had a lot of really great reception to Long Lost. As you mentioned, it got optioned by an incredible producer, Jenny Klein. That was a while ago, but it was an incredible experience. I don't know, it was really fun. I'm still really proud of that book. It's almost, 8 years old now, which
like 2018. It's this crazy. And then coming from that, you're now working on the latest story, which is Loving Ohio, with artist Sam Beck. And man, like, something you've done really well with this story. As before we get into it, we'll get a brief summary, but something I've noticed is, like, with your stories, is it's more than just like horror. You don't focus just on the horror. Like, it's a lot of character driven style. How important is, because I'm a big horror fan, a lot of horror, right? We don't focus on the characters. A lot of time they're just cannon fodder, right? To Jason or Freddy. So what does that mean to you when crafting these horror stories, to build these characters that actually mean something?
I think for horror to be effective, I'm so sorry about, there's like the sun is like right.
You're totally good.
I'm trying to figure out how I can. Oh, that's okay. Okay, there we go. So like, when I craft horror stories or any stories, the main thing for me is, and the thing that I think makes horror super effective, is that you have to care about the characters, and you have to care what happens to them. And I think horror, huge genre. There's so many types of horror, but the horror that I really respond to is the horror of emotion and the self, and of really getting to know the circumstances around the nightmare that is surrounding these, in Loving Ohio's case, the 14s. And I felt that when I was crafting this story, to make the horror effective, the reader really needed to care about all of the characters that they're following. And to do that, I think you have to empathize with them. You have to know how they feel. You have to feel what they're feeling too. You have to be scared when they're scared, because you're not entirely sure who is going to make it, or if anything bad is going to happen to these characters that you're either growing to like or have already, bought into. And so, I think, you look at Psycho. It's like you go back to like Hitchcock. It's like you follow, I'm forgetting her name in that movie, but you follow the main girl in that movie up until she gets murdered in the shower. And that scene works so well. It's because traditionally when you're following a main character in a movie, you expect them to be okay. There's a safety in that. And that subversion is what horror is all about. It's taking the safety away from the reader. And for me, I think I do that really well when people empathize with my characters and know them and understand them. And when that starts to happen, I feel empowered to try and pull the rug out from under the readers. And I think that's where the horror happens.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, a lot like, even Scream did it with the slasher genre when we went in thinking that Drew Barrymore, who was top billed, and then they kind of pulled that rug out from underneath us. And then here we are. So going into Loving Ohio, go ahead, give us your pitch, your summary pitch, what this story is about.
Yeah, so Loving Ohio is a horror story that takes place in the Midwest in a town called Loving in Ohio, about 4 teens who are living in a town that is the headquarters of a cult called the Chorus. And they start to travel down this kind of nightmarish journey into the heart of what's going on in their town after their friend Jesse commits suicide at the beginning of the book. And that mystery of why he did this and what's going on with this cult that everyone is familiar with and everyone has a connection to. And that drives our characters to take action and figure out if they can get out of Ohio alive. That's kind of their goal, is if they can leave. So I think that's the book.
Right. Now, in creating a horror comic, I feel like there's got to be an extra level of, getting the person holding the book to be, scared or nervous or have that jump scare. So one of the things I thought you did so brilliantly was the main character is normal looking, or the main villain is normal looking, but terrifying at the same time. So how did that work with the artist in creating this creepy guy that is, there's not anything that you're like, oh my God, but
they're slightly off. You can just look at somebody and like they're unsettling.
Thank you.
In a weird way. Yeah.
Sam is incredible. Sam's my co-creator on this, and we worked hand in hand in making the man in the afternoon as uncanny as we possibly could. And I think that like for us to succeed in that, we had to make him feel normal, if that makes sense. And he's not normal. You can tell when you look at him that nothing is right about him. But I think horror has a tendency to amplify the grotesque in their monsters. And to me, there's something equally as horrifying when a monster is a normal looking guy. And I think that kind of speaks also to the kind of modern idea of what's real and what's terrifying. And you never know, who the monster is in real life. And, not to bring up like super serious things, but like you think about the US and mass shootings and kind of mass tragedy events. And those things are perpetrated by people that are normal looking people.
Yeah,
and I think that's
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that was the desire, is to create a villain that looks like he doesn't look like a villain. He just looks like a guy.
Lauren, you're about to get real proud of me here. All right. It's like Dean Winchester said in Supernatural, like monsters they can deal with. It's the humans that freak him out. And I mean, it's true. Like this guy, he looks like he could be like your creepy uncle. Like there's something just off. He has like the gaunt cheekbones, things like that.
Yeah.
But I
did a little bit of like, when I saw him, and there's nothing.
It's the long hair. It's like the sunken in cheek. There's just something off. Like you said, it's a normal person. But if you saw them at the same time, it'd be like, all right, it's like Joel Osteen. Let's take him, super pastor.
Yeah,
right? You look at him and he's creepy, like he is.
There's a lack of humanity that is expressed in their kind of dullness and normalcy. It's like you look at Joel Osteen, he goes so far out of his way to make himself look like a normal person, but that through the veneers and the plastic surgery and the eyes, there's nothing really there anymore.
Yeah.
Thank you for all picking up on that. I'm really proud of the man in the afternoon. I think he's one of the scariest things I've come up with.
Well, even
love,
just
you're
when
right.
he tries to act very calm and very,
Yeah.
I'm just doing this. Can you help me? And I don't want to give too many spoilers of what he's doing and what he's pretending to do, but it's just how quick could somebody react to what he's trying to do? Be like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, let me help you. And it was like, I know that he was evil, but part of me was almost like, well, should they help him? And I'm like, no, he's evil. So I found myself getting lost in the story of like, because anytime you watch a horror movie, you're like, what would I do? I would run away. I would run up, I'd call the cops. I'd hide here. I'd do this. So yeah, I found myself doing that. But I want to go to the religious aspect because I was talking Joel Osteen.
Yeah, I was wanting to dive into that too because I picked up on some things myself. I don't know, Lauren, if you picked up on, but I was getting like, Scientology kind of vibes too at the same time with the things that they do. Like they were making one of the characters' dads sign away like a lien, for example, and it kind of got Scientology vibes. Lauren, I didn't mean to cut you off, Lauren. Like,
no,
by all
you're
means, take the reins
fine.
here. But yeah, that's what I was.
But also,
up
like
on.
forcing the kids to go to church when they don't want to, and I feel like our generation too. Not everybody, but a big part of our generation is pulling away. Like I was raised going to church regularly.
Yeah,
I don't take my kids to church. So I feel like it is that next generation of like, well, I don't trust what the church is doing. So I got a lot of those vibes where this generation's trying to escape that because
absolutely
seeing how manipulative it is.
Oh, for sure. And I grew up in a cult, so I kind of pulled a lot of the feelings that I had growing up in a space like that to put into the book. And yeah, I think that the spirituality of the book and the kind of combativeness against organized religion and what I would just consider just the general culture of cults. I think that, cults don't have to be spiritual. I've worked in jobs that feel like cults. So, it's like,
yes,
there's a mindset and there's a way that these places can manipulate their influence and power to kind of extract what they want from you, whether that's money or time. In the cult that I was brought up in, it was mostly money. Their centers were all funded by patrons who would, basically give tithing. And because they're a religion, they never had to disclose, how much that was and who was getting paid. So all very nebulous. And, other cults, there's a cult here in town in Columbus that, they don't really do too much on the money side, but instead they indoctrinate early and they live in group homes and they bring up, it's all part of a systemic kind of insidious capturing of vulnerable minds. And, I think one of the things that I wanted to show with this book and my experiences is that a lot of representations of cults are very big, sex cults and murder cults, and everyone is getting branded on their genitals and it's crazy, very
extreme,
looking at you, girl from Smallville.
Exactly, extreme shit. And my experience with growing up in a cult was boring. It was boring and dull. And I was given books to read as a kid about baseball and how it, I was never brainwashed I was brainwashed. I was a kid and you're kind of indoctrinated in this. But,
right.
The insidiousness of it can also be dull and boring and look like nothing at all. And that's what I wanted to represent with the cult in Loving Ohio. The chorus is that, they're not kidnapping people off the street and they're not sacrificing people to a eldritch god. They're just buying up property in town from people that don't know any better and maybe harboring some murderers,
I'm glad again you brought that up because my big thing while I was reading this book is I kept there's a tension you build, right? Because you hit on something. Most people when they think of cults, it's murder, it's all that stuff. But they don't make movies about the boring cults. Let's just be honest, like those don't sell. However, something I think you capture really well here is you're building that tension because we know that something is off with this cult and there's some murder going on. And so you're waiting for the group at large to kind of follow into that kidnapping murder aspect. And I think half of that really builds the tension and the suspense, at least for me reading this book, because I was like, all right, when's this going to happen? And it just kind of like this long drawn out that it may or may not happen. I don't want to spoil, but still, like, that was very, very good.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That was very kind of you.
Lauren, what do you got? I do look like I'd say something. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. I just have to keep muting. So I want to go into, you very much so at the beginning were like, this is a made up city. This is, Loving, Ohio does not exist. And you very much so like, was there a reason behind that? Did you just want it to be very clear, like this is completely fictional? Because I thought that was interesting at the very beginning that you pushed that.
I love what that does as a artistic tool. I love doing that. I think this book does something very unique. And I think starting it with that blank page, kind of disclosing what that this isn't real, I think that adds to the sense of dread. And I don't know, most, fiction books don't do that. Fiction books don't start by saying this story's fake. Right. And I think that there's something magic in that. And I've never seen anyone do that before. And to me, it's just a tool that I use to bludgeon people into feeling dread. And I think it does exactly what you brought up. You just kind of have to wonder why I did it. And I like that about that. I like when people read something and kind of have to like, is this a real place? Why did he say this is all fake? I know it's a comic book. Of course it's fake. Why is he telling me it's like, I love when that causes like narrative and reader kind of apprehension and confusion. And I think that starts the book off really strong in a way that sets you up for you don't really know what the fuck I'm doing or what's going to happen. And there's a sense of like deep dread in the bottom of your chest that I think comes up from that one page. I think at the very beginning just kind of sets the tone, I think.
Right. Well, because I immediately was like, is it real? Is it based on some real? So like I instantly went there. So that's a fun little twist that you did. Now you said you've always been into horror. Are there any horror books or horror movies that you feel you drew inspiration from?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think for me, I always draw inspiration from not necessarily horror exactly, but I love the work of Haruki Murakami. He's a Japanese novelist. He wrote one of my favorite books called The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle. And in that, it's very dreamlike. It's very surreal. The reality of the story is mixed with kind of the unreality of the story, and it all becomes kind of untangleable from itself. And I love that. I love when stories can show you a real thing and show you an imaginary thing, and it doesn't necessarily even matter if it's real or not. It's just what's happening. So that was a big inspiration. That's always a big inspiration for me. David Lynch. I love David Lynch and what he's done. Twin Peaks was a big inspiration. Satoshi Kon, the film Perfect Blue, big inspiration for this. I love, there was, honestly, one of the bigger inspirations as well is just the liminal creepy, creepypasta, 4chan style, green text, scary stories. I think those do something, and they're so evocative, and they can do something in such a short amount of space that authors try to do in novels and movies. And I think that's super inspiring. I love when I read something really short that rocks me. And internet culture and internet myth making and even the SCP, files. I don't know if either of you are familiar with that.
I've heard of them, and then like there's Reddit that has like there's a big like short story things on Reddit. Yeah, so I'm familiar with all of these. Yep.
Yeah, so that always kind of is in the back of my brain for inspiration and seeing what other people, can do with the space that they have. And comics is a very space oriented medium. You only have a very limited amount of space on a page to get an idea across or to say what you want. So thinking about these shorter forms of writing as kind of a lodestar to be inspired by has always been kind of the thing that I love. And then movies. I just I love horror movies of all kinds. I watch so many of them,
Me
like
too.
all the time. It's impossible to keep track of all of them. Well, I'm trying to remember what I just watched. I watched The First Omen recently, and some other ones. And I have a huge list of things that I want to watch. I want to watch the one with what's her face, Sydney Sweeney.
Oh yeah.
Immaculate.
Immaculate. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm always like just trying to intake as much horror and as much art as I can to just help me expand what I think is scary and what I know to be scary and what maybe I don't even know yet. Is there was a thing I read about. It was kind of like a thought experiment called the paradox of the basilisk or something, and it was horrifying. It's a cool story. It's a cool paradox. It's a cool thought experiment. I thought that was really scary. And I just basically love anything that can kind of find the little nugget of me that still wants to be afraid and gets me. I think that's all awesome stuff.
Right.
One of the, like, again, like the real and fake, there is something. Did you kind of play in the real and fake? Because you're like, you don't, it doesn't matter. There's scenes in this book too that's like the third eye. They get to that sequence when they kind of go to the ancestral plane, whatever you want to say that word. Yeah. So it's like for a minute, because I almost feel like the audience, we kind of almost need that for a second because we're so immersed into this book and going along with it. Sam did a wonderful job with like the coloring. There's a lot of oranges. It's brighter for a horror novel. Like horror loves to
such a gorgeous. Yeah.
They like horror loves to lean into dark because dark is scary. But what you guys did in this is a lot of this is daytime. And so did Sam, like, did that make it, was that kind of like a point of conversation with you guys, like, no, let's do a lot of this in the daytime, or how did that
absolutely yeah no when we were developing the book, Sam and I really wanted to do something unique with the coloring, and Sam had an incredible idea to do a really limited color palette. So there's only 4 colors in this book. Sam picked 4 colors, and then she used them at varying opacities to create depth. But it comes from a printing technique called risograph, which usually has again very limited color palette. And by like limiting our color palette, we really again just drilled down the mood. And for me, like mood and tone and the aesthetics of a horror story, sometimes, honestly, not sometimes, most of the time, it's more important to me than the narrative, because what's scary doesn't make sense. And the illogical can be more scary than if you fully understand something. And I love that. I love that there's a genre in which storytelling can be stretched and the rules of narrative don't necessarily have to be followed to a T, because when you start to break them, it can really elevate the horror and really elevate, the emotions and what you're trying to do. So yeah, it was a huge discussion, and Sam did an unbelievable job. I think this is one of the most gorgeous colored books ever
absolutely
made.
Crushed it. 100% agree.
Well, and
like that's one thing I noticed for sure.
Well, and the kids, you can all see the weight that they carry, and you can see that on their face. So they just look so down.
Broken.
So now, this, well, I guess it's a graphic novel, not a comic, because it is longer. This wrapped up, so it does have an ending, but it's not an ending that I feel is happily ever after necessarily. So will you ever go back and touch on any more of this, or do you feel like you did?
I don't know.
With this story?
I definitely, when you finish something, you always have a part of you that wants to come back to a story or to characters. And I love Sloane and Cameron and Anna and Elliott. They're some of my favorite characters that I've ever written. I feel like I really know them each, like, very specifically and individually. And yeah, I think that if, down the line, if there's a story that really captivates me or pulls me and speaks to something that these characters could experience, I absolutely could come back to these characters. But I think the story has always been intended as, from beginning to end, I wanted it to be complete, as in, right. If there is never any more of this, which there very likely will probably never be, I'm really happy that where it ends is where I wanted it to end. And comic series, you don't have that luxury sometimes. And with graphic novels, and this is a huge thanks to Dark Horse and my editor Connor. They really trusted me to like write the book that I wanted to write, and I got to do that. I'm again super lucky. This is a book that straight from my heart and Sam's heart. You know, Connor did an incredible job editing it, but a lot of the initial original intentions are there throughout the whole thing. So I'm really happy with. I'm really happy with everything, honestly.
Nice. It really does feel like more than a horror. You guys also transcended like that, moving past loss, love, and grief. So like coming in there, that's something I also didn't expect. And like you said, like you really know these characters because really it's about teenagers who are, as a group, they're experiencing loss. Like their friend has committed suicide, and it's how they work through that with this other tragic. And I think you guys did a phenomenal job. And it is getting ready to come out in August, I believe. And
August 6th.
Okay, August 6th. That's just incredible. And so are you going to be at any cons this coming summer, any upcoming conventions where people can maybe pick this up in person and kind of chat with you about it at all?
Yeah, so so there's going to be a little book tour in August, mostly almost exclusively all in Ohio, because I figured that makes the most amount of sense with the title of the book.
Yeah.
But I am going to be making hopefully I will be at SPX this year with my wife. I might be selling it there. It depends on, some other stuff. We have a son, so it's always like juggling the family and the comic book.
They just ruin it all, man. Let me tell you.
My son's 18 months, and I literally can't wait to bring him to some of these spaces and get to show him all the cool things that I get to do. So, and then I honestly, I just put in an application for GalaxyCon Columbus here in town. Yeah. I think mostly I'll be doing a lot of conventions next year. Probably C2E2 next year, probably TCAF next year, probably New York Comic Con next year. Next year is going to be the year where I'm out at all these places hawking my wares. This year has been like recovery and promotion and stuff. So next year is going to be where I'm hustling and stuff.
Well, you need that too, especially with a young kid. I got 2, Lauren's got 3, and it really is special getting to that age, because I have an 8-year-old son and I've taken him to Comic Cons, and now he sits down and reads comic books.
That's so cute.
It's amazing. It's such a special experience. So I can't wait to see like that you reach that point too. It's going to be incredible. And hopefully like people in Ohio, it does. Yes. But I mean, hopefully everybody gets out there in like 2025, perfect timing. The book will be out. Do you have any other works that you have on your plate that you're also working on this year besides Loving Ohio?
Yeah, so Golgotha Motor Mountain is my comic series through IDW with Lonnie Nadler and Robbie Rodriguez and Marissa Louise, and
that's one trippy one out there for anybody who hasn't read it.
Thank you. Yeah,
I've been reading it. It's trippy. It's awesome.
Thank you. It's the one of the weirder things I've ever written, and I, having written it with Lonnie Nadler, who is an incredibly talented, one of my favorite people in comics, incredibly talented, writes some of the coolest shit. He's got The Sickness out right now too, which is just an incredible book. And so the trade for Golgotha Motor Mountain comes out on December 10th. That'll be the full collected series. And then I also have another graphic novel coming out on September 17th. It's a middle grade horror graphic novel called Heebie Jeebies through Paper Cuts.
Nice.
And that's with collaborator Shelby Criswell. We did Terminal Punks together for Mad Cave a couple years ago, and we got to reunite and make another really punk cool book, but this time it's for kids, and it's something I've been wanting to really get into since having my son, and I'm really excited for that. So yeah, those are the 3 books that I've got coming out this year. Loving Ohio comes out August 6th, Heebie Jeebies comes out September 17th, and then Golgotha Motor Mountain comes out December 10th.
Awesome. I can't wait. Can't wait to get the physical copy. And the last question we like to ask is, obviously, where can people find you at if they want to look more into your works?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter or Instagram. Just search my name, Matthew Erman. I'm usually the only comic writer that pops up. And I have a website, just MatthewErman.com. And yeah, I'm always available. I like being a part of the community and helping people. This community and this industry, specifically the industry, can be kind of esoteric and hard to figure your way around. So I always tell new creators if you have any questions, like shoot me an email or hit me up. I'm always happy to answer any logistical questions you have about making comics, or, if you're looking about getting in with a publisher and you're wary, or if you don't quite know what a contract term means, I'm always open for questions and stuff like that. I try my best to not be a gatekeeper and to let people have as much information as I wish I had when I started doing this. So that's how you can find me.
That's the way to do it too, because it really is, especially, modern day comic books is a really hard place to navigate. There's so many different places, so many out there. So that's incredible. We really thank you for taking the time and sharing this book with us, number one, because it was fantastic. And then number two,
thank you so much,
hanging out with us. And man, as a fellow horror enthusiast, maybe we'll have to look down the road to chat some horror movies, because there are some good ones coming out.
Oh, absolutely.
Soon. So would love to get to that.
I am super excited for Longlegs. I know. I think everyone is.
Yeah, I've seen the trailer, and I've heard people talking about how it's like the best of the year. I'm pumped for that. Quiet Place Year 1's coming out, so I'm excited for that one.
There's just a lot of good stuff coming out. It's a horror renaissance, I feel like, right now, past couple years. So we're living in the good times, I think, for horror.
Yes,
I was never into horror. Matt made me get into horror.
Yeah, and now
that's the way to do it. That's
what we do.
Well, my 11-year-old's huge into it. She's like, "Can I watch this? Can I watch that?" And I'm like, "This doesn't scare you?" No,
it doesn't.
That's awesome. That's. I mean, I'm hoping my son is like that too, because I just want to. They're so fun, and you just get to share, and there's like a communal. They can be funny, and I don't know, love them.
They can, yeah, especially the B ones. I'm a big B horror guy, but also like the more serious ones. So, but definitely we'll chat. But everybody else, make sure you pick up this book. Let us know. Send pictures on August 6th. Don't worry, we'll remind you when it comes out. And then you can be sure to check out our actual full in-depth review on nerdinitiative.com, because every Wednesday we go ahead and review your favorite comic books. Last week we had over 30 different books that we reviewed. So if you don't know what to read, whether you're a first-time reviewer or a first-time comic book reader, maybe you're seasoned and you're just not sure what's out there, don't worry, we got you, whether it's on this podcast or nerdinitiative.com. So everybody else, thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you guys next time. Cheers.
Thank you guys so much.
The content you are listening to is part of the Nerd Initiative Podcast Network. For more info about the home of pop culture positivity, check out nerdinitiative.com. The content you are listening to is part of the Nerd Initiative Podcast Network. For more info about the home of pop culture positivity, be sure to check out nerdinitiative.com.
Every day when you log into ChumbaCasino.com, the ultimate online social casino, you get a free daily bonus. Imagine if you got daily bonuses in other parts of your life.
I chose French fries over loaded French fries.
I asked Stuart from accounting about his weekend, even though I don't care.
I updated my operating system without having to call tech support.
Collect your free daily bonus at ChumbaCasino.com now. And live the Chumba life.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, we're all set for the party. I've trimmed the tree, hung the mistletoe, and paired all those weird-shaped knives and forks with the appropriate cheeses. And I plugged in the Bartesian.
Bartesian?
It's a home cocktail maker that makes over 60 premium cocktails, plus a whole lot of seasonal favorites, too. I just got it for $50 off. So, how about a Cosmopolitan or a mistletoe margarita?
I'm thirsty.
Watch. I just pop in a capsule, choose my strength, and...
Wow, it's beginning to feel more seasonal in here already.
If your holiday party doesn't have a bartender bartender, then you become the bartender. Unless you've got a Bartesian, because Bartesian crafts every cocktail perfectly in as little as 30 seconds. And I just got it for $50 off.
'Tis the season to be jollier.
Add some holiday flavor to every celebration with the sleek, sophisticated home cocktail maker, Bartesian. Get $50 off any cocktail maker at bartesian.com/cocktail. That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail.